Holy cow, November
Third.
14th, man.
November
Rob
14th.
Brown, Brendan Martin got a lot to cover today. 16 strong SEC, folks. SEC Sideline Sports Network. Next hour and change, we're going to cover a lot of ground. Coach Matt Dean, ULM John Hartwell, Brad Logan. Brad had been on in a while. Love the guy. He's a big part of the Ole Miss broadcast. He knows everything Mississippi State, Southern Miss, out of Bruce, Mississippi.
All things Miss.
All things Magnolia. We are going to have a lot of fun with Brad, and we need to start getting him back on here more too. Guys, smash that subscribe button on the bottom right-hand corner. You're starting to see I'm sending links from Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. Hit the subscribe button on there. You'll automatically get a ding every time we go live, and that can be frequently. We did it last Friday at 1:30 and again Saturday at 7:30 with big stories that are happening at any of the 16 SEC schools. We have the ability to go pop up live. So, hey, the next hour and 15 or so, get pen and paper handy. Take a lot of notes because Sidelines is ready. Again, playoff rankings have got people stirred up like a bunch of wet hens. So I'll get started, man. John Hartwell, I'm going to see you Saturday. And as they say down south, Saturday. There's a T in there somewhere. ULM coming over there to play Auburn. Had lunch over there with Matt Dean and Coach Rich Duncan and Jim Cleanthes, the baseball coach at Rhodes. God, that was fun. Hey, Matt, I ate one of the best lunches and healthiest lunches I've had in a while for less than $7. I mean, you can't beat that. That's a university cafeteria, even at Rhodes. So,
you went with the vegan. You went with the vegan taco, which I recommend, even though I don't do the vegan taco.
Yeah, it was
you
good.
Can tell I'm a burger guy.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I was too. I just said I'll give it a try. All right, guys, we got to talk about these college football playoff rankings, and whoever wants to attack this thing first. But I am going to say, look at my shirt. Don't feed the bears. My wife got that for me up in Chilco, up in way out in Canada. They drop you off for 5 days in a plane and leave you there. There's no way out. And if you try to track it on your own, watch out for the bears. John, as an athletic director, and Matt, you too, I'm going to start with you. The head of the Big Ten, I think, is on this committee. Am I correct? How do we do this? But is it made for TV to stir up controversy? Because I'd love to be a fly on the wall in Kirby Smart's locker room right now, especially right before they take the field to play Tennessee Saturday.
Yeah, the thing is as it stands right now, Georgia's on the outside looking in, even though they're ranked number 12, and the CFP 12, but obviously Boise at the current time kicks up because you have a guaranteed spot for a group of 5 school, which I think is a good thing. And that's not a biased statement. That's just, that's how it was put out. But the great thing about Georgia is all of a sudden, they can't feel sorry for themselves. All they got to do is go on the field on Saturday and they're right back in with the victory Saturday. So, you look at the top and you see Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana. So you got 4 of the top 5 Big Ten. And I know there's some, this audience is primarily SEC folks. But, the numbers don't lie so far. And it's hard to argue with where it's at. I know there's people that say, Indiana's strength of schedule is not that strong. But hey, they're 10-0, and it's hard to argue that fact. And are there some really good teams in the SEC? And how does the next 3 weeks or the next 4 weeks shake out? And what's the final number? But that's part of the excitement about it. And I think it has been a huge boom for college football and the interest down the stretch in November.
Real quick, my friend Joe Passantino, when he was living in Bradenton, they were at a hotel in Sarasota. He said, we couldn't get the SEC network, but by God, we could get the Big Ten network. Just think about that. Now, there are Big Ten fans. I'd say 80% of the TV sets in America live in the Big Ten geographical footprint. Matt Dean, you know that conference well. former assistant to Bo Schembechler. No, but you know that conference well. And we all watch the Big Ten. You can't avoid it. Yeah, we're an SEC-centric show, but we're going to talk Sun Belt, ACC, Big Ten, because they're all interconnected. When you looked at these rankings Tuesday night, what were your thoughts?
What stood out to me, I agree with John wholeheartedly in Indiana, 10-0. And they're going to – some of these things play themselves out. We understand that in 2 weeks, Ohio State hosts Indiana. So we're going to find out more about Indiana in 2 weeks. Their best win right now, they've beaten Michigan. They have not played Penn State or Oregon. So their strength of record's different, but they passed the eye test. The thing that's really interesting is I'm looking at Penn State. Their best 2 wins are 21-7 over Illinois, who at the time was top 25 program, and I have respect for Illinois program, but also a 5-loss USC team. So Penn State only did not score an offensive touchdown at home against Ohio State. Doesn't mean they shouldn't be in the top 12. Don't get me wrong when I say this, but I wasn't sure. I think the committee has them at 4, just behind Texas. I'm not sure that's accurate right now, but I think things play themselves out. And honestly, I think what's interesting is you're going to have Georgia have the opportunity, as John described, to go in and take care of business because Tennessee's a top 6, top 7 program right now. And literally, if Georgia wins this football game, you could see those almost trade places a little bit. You could see Georgia vault into the top 9, 8, 7, and probably Tennessee go to the bubble. And that's the problem with it. There's another problem, too, that I think the committee will work out in the years to come if we stay at 12. In essence, they gave the first 4 byes to the conference winners, right? The Big Ten, SEC, not the Pac-12, the Big 12, and then the ACC. Well, right now, if you look at the Big 12, BYU currently has been winning some really close games. You could almost go to the Utah game. John, I know it's a big rivalry game, but it was a really big call at the end. And one of your colleagues, former colleagues in state, had some choice words to say about the officiating in that game. But looking forward, if BYU stumbles and let's say a 2-loss Kansas State or a 2-loss Colorado team gets in the Big 12 championship and they win that game, are they really deserving of a 4 seed? That's the way the structure is right now. So let's say in the future, right now you get a Big 10 1 and 2 that's going to play each other possibly in the Big 10 championship game. Is it fair to the loser of that game to fall out of the top 4 and have to go to the 5 through 12? That's the way the system's set up now. I think we're just ecstatic to have 12 teams, so we're okay with it. But moving forward, I think there should be some consideration from reseeding the top 4. Yes, those 4 schools get in, but if they're not clearly a top 4 seed, should they be seeded accordingly?
Yeah, and I want to say this. If you think Penn State's not good, you're out of your mind. I mean, and I know
I'm not saying that either. Yeah.
No, I'm not saying you are. But right. For people in general. Because I watched them a couple of years ago go down to Auburn and absolutely just looked like clubbing baby seals with Auburn that day. It was awful.
Right.
And 44-18 or something. And I was with some friends that never leave a game early. They couldn't take it anymore. And I will say this. Ohio State probably makes a great argument, along with Oregon, who beat them 32-31. Ohio State is loaded.
Yes, they are.
They're stacked. John, looking at the big picture, you were the AD at Utah State for 7.5 years. I know you don't miss the snow, shoveling snow like grumpy old men. I got to ask you, what are the BYU fans like? Do y'all have to get extra Dr. Pepper when they come to town? I mean, what would they like? Do they travel well?
They travel extremely well, and they travel well. Look at the games when they come east to play, if you will, because in just about every community there's an LDS, church, and
or two.
And they will travel miles. To see their team play. I remember they came to Oxford when I was at Ole Miss. They would come from the surrounding 4 or 5 states because they don't come, or at that time they didn't come east that often to play. You had to stock up on your amount of Dasani that you had in the stadium. But they are passionate fans. and I only got to see a couple of minutes the other night of that BYU Utah game. But you talk about a bitter rivalry, just like Utah State and BYU was when I was there. I mean, and I've had the opportunity to be part of Egg Bowls as a kid. I got to go, to the Iron Bowl. Neither one of those rivalries have anything on, BYU and Utah or BYU and Utah State. You would think, hopefully nobody takes offense to this, but you think, oh, these are Mormon kids. You're not going to hear any profanities coming out of stands. I'll tell you, unequivocally, I heard things coming out of those stands from those students that could rival anything. They even violated my comfort zone, which that's pretty wide.
That's a Mobile guy saying that. Well,
hey, Rob, one follow up on the conversation earlier about how this 12 plays out, and Matt was talking about the top four, and hey, if you're undefeated, if you're in Oregon, or I don't want to use Oregon as an example because obviously Matt near and dear, and they're having I think they are unequivocally the best team in college football today. Now, is that going to remain the same through the next 2 months or month? Yeah, 2 months until a championship game. Who knows? But even let's just take in Indiana. If Indiana is undefeated going to the championship game, and they play Oregon in the championship game, and Indiana loses on the last play of the game, how far down then do they fall? Obviously, they won't be one of those first four to get the bye, but how far down do they fall? And there are going to be a small group of teams, and this is going to sound crazy, that it may actually be advantageous for them not to play in their conference championship game. Right. And I'm talking about whoever ends up in that 5 through 8 slot.
Yes.
Because you're going to host a first round game. You're then going to advance. You're going to have to play somebody 1 through 4, but that's going to be on a neutral site. I'm not sure that group there, whoever's 5, 6, 7, 8, doesn't have a really nice path to making a national championship game.
And you're talking about teams, as crazy as that sounds, not wanting to play in the conference championship game. I was at Mercedes-Benz Stadium last year for Georgia and Alabama, and I saw a lot, but I'll tell you what I did see. I saw people out there trying to scalp paper tickets, and somebody went up to the guy and said, sir, everything is on electronic email. And he goes, huh? I mean, you can see a lot of things, but I'm going to defend Georgia here for what that's worth. Damn, last year they're number 1. Alabama beats them. It's not like you lost to the Sisters of the Poor. You lost to Alabama, and they dropped from 1 to 6. They were number 3 last Saturday when they went over to play Ole Miss, and they dropped to 12. I mean, look who they've lost to. Alabama, they were down 28-0, came back late, took the lead, and they still lost. Went on the road and killed Texas. They lost to Ole Miss. Now, a year ago, what a difference a year makes. Georgia beat Ole Miss in Athens 52-17. They rushed for over 300 yards, 8.5 yards a carry, 19 quarterback pressures. And Kiffin was saying after the game, we got to get better players. At that time, Georgia had 24 5-star kids on the roster. Ole Miss had 1 or 2. It's changed a lot in the last year. John, that's really cool to shed light on the BYU, because I know one thing. I'll never forget 10 years ago in the Miami Bowl, was it, Matt? The Memphis BYU football game. I mean, Lance Russell and Dave Brown from Studio Wrestling on Saturday mornings should have refereed and called that game. That fight at the end of the game, golly, all we needed was Mike Tyson to make an appearance. And by the way, my money is on Tyson to win tomorrow. Guys, I'm just throwing that in for good measure. But Matt, looking at this SEC, Big 10, Big 12, and we're kind of going national here, but it is. Again, I think Georgia's getting. I'm agnostic about this. In the interest of full disclosure, y'all know I'm an Auburn grad, but Georgia's like a first cousin with Auburn. It's a deep rivalry, and I'm going. They go from 3 to 12. Matt, are they doing this to get people riled up? Because they're doing it.
I still think, and listen, John's been on higher level committees than I have, but I still
and me
think
too.
and you too, Rob. But the reality of the situation is, and John described it earlier, Georgia still has a path. So let's say, for example, Rob, let's just go down here. Let's say they only drop Georgia to 7 or 8. Okay, let's play in that world for a little bit. Well, if they lose to Tennessee and they're a 3-loss team, it doesn't matter anyway. They're out. So the committee knows that Georgia has a path. I think they're just setting the table for Georgia getting back this week. And then, what's going to happen if Tennessee loses to Georgia? Do they go out, or are they 12, or are they, you know what I'm saying? So there's still a path. Now, the bigger question, and I pose this to John, is he brought this up, and I've said this for a while too, is are we getting to the point, I understand the money, but now that we have a playoff, do the conference championships make as much sense? For the example that John described, let's say you got number 1 and number 2 playing each other, like last year, similar, Georgia, Alabama. Alabama was outside looking in last year, but it was different. But now you're in the situation, if one plays 2 in a conference championship playoff, that really hurts the loser of that game, even though they're still going to probably be 5. I would say if you're 1 and lose to 2, you would go to 5, which means you host to 12. Then you actually have an interesting path. If you're the 5 seed, and I've discussed this with my son, if you're the 5 seed, you play a home game against 12, right? Then you're probably going to play the Big 12 winner or the ACC winner in the quarterfinals on a neutral site. You win that, you're back in the semis anyway. But the problem is you're playing an extra game. If I'm like a 5 through 8 seed, I don't have to play that extra game and risk injury and guys getting beat up. And it's we've made college football a lot closer to win a championship like an NFL season, and that's truly not fair to some of these young men. And that's just my opinion.
That's a great point, Matt. Here's the other component of that. I had a conversation with a colleague the other day who is a Power 4 AD who their school is in the mix on this, and there's a concern out there. I mean, obviously you've got some high net worth fans who can afford it all, but let's just say Oregon. Let's say Oregon goes to a conference championship game. They lose that conference championship game. They then have to go, let's just say randomly, and I'm looking here at the games. Let's say they go to the Fiesta Bowl.
Right.
But for a quarterfinal. They win that. Then they go to the Cotton Bowl for a semifinal. They win that, and then they have to go to Atlanta. How many of your fans
Good point.
can afford those 4 trips in a 6-week period during the holidays when airfare, hotels, I know that well because my oldest daughter turned 16 in the beginning of January, and we're taking a small window in early December to go to New York. And hey, if you're going to New York anytime soon, you better take a look to keep from culture or sticker shock on the price of a hotel room. But you take that scenario and your donors or boosters or students or whoever it may be have to take 4 trips. A lot of folks can't afford that four times over.
I agree, John. Well, and as a parent of a staff member, we're looking right now of all the scenarios. We're trying to get to these things figured out, and you can't do it before you get there. And it's very difficult fiscally if you want to see every game. Like the 5 through 12 games, I will say this: I think they're going to be incredible atmosphere. We've never seen that before on the host site, right? They've always been neutral site bowl games in the top 4. Now you're going to have 5 through 12 at 4 different sites. And yesterday, I heard Greg McElroy, former Alabama quarterback, fantastic analyst, talk about some of the Southern teams. The way the seeding goes out, you could see an Alabama going up to Penn State, let's say, in a 35-degree weather snowfest. You just never know what's going to happen because of the demographics. Those games are played the weekend of December 20th, if I'm not mistaken. So now you're going to have weather factors. You're not going to be at neutral sites and bowl games until you get to the quarterfinals. And listen, I understand the history behind everything about why you want to play a conference championship game. I get that. I think one ways to combat that a little bit is to reseed the top four. That's just my opinion. If you do that, then you kind of get the top four teams to bye. And we know for years the SEC has been in the top. We have multiple teams in the top four playoff scenario. So why, are we, why don't we consider reseeding if the top team loses? Like honestly, last year Georgia played out. Now Florida State had half the team not show up to the game, but you can't convince me that Georgia, if they wouldn't have gotten the playoff last year, wouldn't have won a title again. You can't convince me that.
Yeah, well, look, I want to say, Matt, you've never sounded better on the Yeti Blue mic and the headphones. John,
thank you.
You can get a Yeti Blue mic at Best Buy, or I've got a Rode mic at Best Buy, but man.
Rob will drop you one off, John.
No, you guys are too high tech for me, man. I've got the rabbit ears and some aluminum foil and duct tape trying to keep me connected.
I'll tell you what I am going to get. I'm trying to get Starlink out here. That's what I've got to get that. But John, I'm telling you, you're such a great analyst and athletic director. If you'll bring me a size large hoodie, I'll pay you when I see you Saturday. I want a Warhawk. That's a good looking hoodie. I want one like that says Warhawks. That's cool. I really do.
See, should I go this look here? Should I go the hood?
No, Coach Prime, please.
There you go. There you go.
I don't want to look like the Unabomber.
That's right.
That's right.
Ted Kaczynski. Yeah. All right, John, you said you've only got about 30 minutes with us, but I love this insight. I want to ask you what Michael Dixon, one of the viewers, it still makes sense always to be able to claim your division. That gives them, some kind of title. If they lose that big game, the conference championship, it's not fair if they take that away. And a lot of people are starting to make that argument. Where you can have a 10-2 team play in the SEC championship and lose, and then be 10-3. Everybody's talking about a 9-3 team making the playoff. What about a 10-3 team? Matt,
but here's the thing there, Rob, and that's a great point.
Smart,
that a lot of leagues have already vetted out. A lot of leagues have done away with division play, and they're just taking the top two teams exactly because of that. Because you may have in an East division in whatever league, you may have a 12-0 and an 11-1 team, and
right.
And on the other side, your best team is 8-4. Now, that does not do the league a whole lot of good on any front if that 8-4 beats that 12-0 team. And oh, by the way, how about the 11-1 team that's just kind of sitting out there?
Right.
Although back to our previous discussion, that 11-1 team may well be in that 5 to 8 slot, and they may have the clearest path or the smoothest path to making the semifinal or even the CFP championship game.
Well, when Harvey Schiller in the late 80s, former general in the U.S. Air Force, approached the NCAA about, hey, I looked in the rule book and it says nothing about you cannot have a conference championship with divisional format. They were like, well, yeah, it doesn't say you can't. He goes, well, then why can't we? Harvey Schiller started that. He's 84 years old, I believe now, still lives in New York, and very smart man. Then Roy Kramer made it happen. And guys, last Wednesday, I drove through Town Creek, Alabama, on the way to Athens, Alabama, to meet with Winter Timber Outdoors, a new sponsor of ours here on Sidelines. And I went through Town Creek. That's where arguably the biggest play in Southeastern Conference history at that time, and one of the biggest ever, the pick six against Florida and Shane Matthews in that game, because if Alabama had lost, all of the fears of, well, we're just going to beat each other out of a championship would have come to fruition. So here we are, guys. You got teams. We could have 5 10-2 teams. Missouri is out there crowing about, and I like Eli Drinkwitz. He's not afraid. But we could have 5 10-2 teams here, and Texas could be 11-1. And has anybody figured out that tiebreaker formula? I mean, John, you've been on every committee. Matt, you do too. Somebody's got to figure it out, and it ain't going to be Gomer Pyle.
Yeah, and there's not necessarily consistency from league to league. I mean, obviously the easy thing is if there are ties, you go head to head competition first. But then some say if they have not played each other head to head, then if you go against the top, the top ranked schools in the league and who's beat, a higher standing team. Other leagues say, okay, we're going to take all of the 10-2 teams, put them in a pot together and see how they've done, against the opponents within that pool. So again, there's not total consistency from league to league in that tiebreaker scenario either.
John, are you in Montgomery?
I am actually in the Courtyard by Marriott in T-Roy, Alabama. I am
Troy.
I'm speaking at a sport management conference here this morning in about an hour, and then headed for a quick trip down to 30A and driving back tomorrow morning to Montgomery to meet our team there for obviously the game Saturday at Auburn.
Well, we want to be the voice of 30A and tell them, everybody, get your arse down there on 30A. Go to Great Southern for brunch. Can't beat it now. I love it. All right, Matt.
A little Cowgirl Kitchen for breakfast. Yeah, there's
and that
there's
donut
not a shortage
place
of good places to eat.
Hey, that's where I saw my first ever glazed donut with maple syrup and bacon on it. How do I wake you up in the morning, Matt? You've never sounded better since you got this Blue Yeti mic and that lunch Tuesday. Your football coach, Rich Duncan, love that guy. Yeah. Jim Cleanthe, same thing from New York. Great baseball coach. Yes. I don't know. I think somebody's got to figure out this tiebreaker formula. But John, before you go, do this. And I know, in your job as AD at ULM, you've got to cover a lot. You got a couple of minutes. We're going to bring Brad Logan in from Mississippi, all things Magnolia. But John, let people know how they can reach out to you and follow you. And we'll be playing. We're going to bet on this game, a friendly wager, a steamer pack of crystals with or without cheese. That's at the discretion of the winner. But tampering, you get a good team going on any level. Franz Beard wrote a 10-point dissertation last night, and everybody needs to read this. Franz Beard, one of the best writers in America, GatorbaitMedia.com. You'll catch him tonight on this channel at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Buddy Martin Show, orangeandbluebloods.com with the whole crew. But that's a big deal. I want your thoughts on that real quick before you go, and then I will see you Saturday morning on the plains of Dixie in Auburn, Alabama.
Yeah, and we look forward to the challenge of going to Auburn. Obviously, we're 5-4 right now. The first and foremost goal is finding a way to get one more, which I feel confident we can. We go to Auburn this week. We'll be in your backyard next week too in Jonesboro, and then closing at home the Saturday after Thanksgiving with I can't call them Louisiana. I still call them Ooh La La or University of Louisiana Lafayette coming to our place. But, opportunity Saturday at Auburn. I'm not going to tell you that I didn't look at the calendar from last year, and this Saturday that we're playing Auburn is the same week and last year's slot that New State came to town and beat the War Eagles. So let's see if we can keep karma going like that. But, you talk about, having success. That is one of the challenges, I think, in NIL, because you've got so many periphery folks that aren't technically part of the university or part of the collective that are out there in the ears, not even necessarily of the student athletes directly, but, whether it's mama or daddy or a high school coach or whoever their go-to person may be. And if folks don't think that's not happening behind the scenes, you're kidding yourself. And it's, that's one of the things that I hope to see going forward in NIL is that there's some regulation as to the street agents supposedly representing the best interest of these kids, which these guys aren't doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing it to put money in their own pockets, not just that of the the student athletes. So I'm hopeful that, as we move forward and make some changes, that something can come about with that. And, that may well have to come from Washington. So, and I know there's some folks, our new Senate Majority Leader, he's been involved in some of these discussions to try to put some guardrails, if you will, around collegiate athletics and NIL and all of those things. So I am encouraged by that.
All right. Well, Matt and I are going to try to solve all the world's problems. And you just shed light on something. I thought that was really most people Matt was telling me, street agents are referred to as missionaries. They're good-hearted, and they have the best interests of the athletes always at heart. But, John, enjoyed it. We'll get you a Yeti Blue mic, and you can be as cool as Matt Dean. And I don't know what I am because I need Starlink. Starlink, Mayday.
No, well, thanks so much, guys. John _Hartwell. You can follow all things at ulmwarhawks.com, and look forward to seeing you Saturday morning. Rob, Matt, see you next week. Have a great weekend.
Take care, John.
All right,
Good
you
luck.
do too. Thank you. Bring in Brad Logan, man. Out there, Logan Media Network. And Brad, you cover Ole Miss, but I always, we've had you on the show a lot over the years, and now we've switched to this video format. But y'all do a great show out in the Grove at Ole Miss, right there by the Starnes Center. Is that where y'all still do it?
Yeah, we're very near the pavilion. I appreciate you having me on. By the way, real quick, John Hartwell is one of the best people in the business. So I love seeing good people like John succeed. So I wish John and ULM nothing but the best. Yeah, we are outside the pavilion, in between the pavilion and Vaught-Hemingway Stadium.
Yeah, and I want to say this, Matt, and Brad, I would like to get you to come back on. I know in the past, at this time slot in the morning, it was difficult for you, but if we can get you on more often, that is a great thing because you work so hard in putting out great content, and you're a professional in every respect. How much fun has it been covering the rise of Ole Miss football? And you also know the Mississippi State. You know Southern Miss. Again, you know that state well. But in particular right now, that win over Georgia Saturday, 68,000, has to be the biggest crowd in the history of college football in that state. Was that as magical of a day as October 4th of 2014? Was it close?
Yeah, I think it was probably the biggest win since probably the 1960s. If you look back in the history of Ole Miss football, they've had a lot of big games in Oxford. Most of them they lost, honestly. But, yeah, I mean, you look back in the win over Alabama in 2014, that's about the only thing that rivals what happened on Saturday. It was kind of a drizzling rain. And I think that kind of added to the mystique of the game, honestly. And no one really left. And what was really interesting to see is how well prepared Ole Miss was, how good that defense really is. And if you look at Ole Miss and what it's been able to do under defensive coordinator Pete Golding, who's going to be inducted into the Delta State Hall of Fame very soon. On team sacks, Ole Miss is number 1 in the country. Tackles for loss are number 1 in the country. Fumbles recovered, the number 3 in the country. And rushing defense are number 2 in the country. I would argue that maybe Indiana is playing better defensively than Ole Miss. But other than that, I don't know that any defense in the country is playing as well as Ole Miss. And honestly, I don't know that anyone expected Ole Miss to be that good of a defensive team coming into the season. But this is absolutely a defensive team with a pretty good offense behind Jackson Dart. But, yeah, to answer your question, there hasn't been a win like this of this significance probably since the Johnny Vaught days of the 1960s. Now, Ole Miss has 2 games left. They'll be heavy favorites. If they can win and they get in the college football playoff, it'll be the biggest win in program history.
Yeah, and when we were at SEC Media Days, I remember Jackson Dart was asked by a whole bunch of reporters around him the possibility of Oxford hosting a playoff game. And he goes, I don't think Oxford can handle it. It'd be bigger than double-decker in late April. But Matt Dean, jumping here with Brad Logan. Is it still Logan Media Network?
Yeah, we're still doing a lot with a lot of different people. Kind of have our hub on Twitter/X and then at LoganMediaNetwork.com. But still working with a lot of people and covering college football and with a main focus on Ole Miss.
Yeah, and we're gonna cover it all. Matt Dean, jump in here.
Hey, Brad, good to be on the show with you. Matt Dean, Rhodes College, just up north from you guys. One of the things you said, I think, so true, and I think it's interesting when you look at the top 12. But Ole Miss defensively has made great strides this year, and one of the finest defensive teams in the country. And Jackson Dart was one of my favorite quarterbacks coming into this season. So I honestly think that, right now you're probably not rated high enough. I would like to see you guys win the last two and get in that top 8 so you could host the 5-8 game. But it's still possible with everything on the board, the crazy SEC. Who knows how the tiebreaker is going to shake up? You guys could still be obviously in the SEC championship game, right? I mean, we don't know. Like A&M still plays Texas. You got Georgia this week hosting Tennessee. We could have a lot of teams with 2 losses at the top of the SEC. It's going to be real interesting how that plays out.
Yeah, there is a very, very small chance that Ole Miss can make the SEC championship game. I don't think that's probably going to happen. But honestly, I think if you're anyone in the SEC, you probably looking to avoid that game because that gives you an opportunity to get a loss before the final college football playoff poll. This is a situation where Ole Miss lost to Kentucky earlier in the year, and Mark Stoops and that Kentucky team came in and they just beat Ole Miss. There was no officiating discrepancies. There was no situation where Ole Miss, beat itself. It was a situation where a very talented Kentucky team that was fully healthy, had a really good defense, came in and beat Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss didn't play as well as it should have offensively, but that was a situation where we thought the season was over. Covering this program, I felt like there was no way they could bounce back from this. And the only path forward for Ole Miss was to win out with an opportunity to lose one more game, but they had to beat Oklahoma, Arkansas, and they had to beat Georgia at home.
Yeah.
And frankly, at that point in the season, I didn't see that happening.
Right.
And then obviously when Ole Miss lost to LSU, we felt like that was it. And so you look at where this program is and where it was a couple of weeks ago. I think that's a testament to not only the players, but the collective, the Grove Collective under Walker Jones, the fans, but this coaching staff. And Lane Kiffin not, for the lack of a better word, letting go of the rope and understanding that there is a path forward with 2 losses. And Ole Miss is razor thin. They're still razor thin right now. Obviously can't take a loss, but you would guess they would be a 2-touchdown favorite against Florida and possibly a larger than a 3-touchdown favorite against a very hapless Mississippi State team.
Yeah.
I understand people say that it's a rivalry game, but when there's such a discrepancy between both programs right now, it would take a catastrophic effort by Ole Miss to lose to Mississippi State. I do think there's a path for Florida to win the game on a week from Saturday, but if Ole Miss does what it should, they should finish the season 10-2. And barring something unforeseen, and you guys know we've seen a lot of unforeseen things this season in college football, Ole Miss should be a member of the college football playoff group of 12 teams. But I do think there's an opportunity for a lot of 2-loss teams, and it could muck things up a little bit for Ole Miss, and it could have them on the outside looking in if things fall perfectly for that to happen.
Brad, Caleb Williams flipped out of Choctaw, Mississippi, from Alabama to Ole Miss. Major. Number 1 player in Mississippi, I believe. Deuce Knight, Lucedale, Mississippi, George County, was committed to Notre Dame for a long time. Right now, he's committed to Auburn. But we're getting close to that December signing date. I know Deuce Knight was at the Georgia Ole Miss game. Anybody that was there had to be really impressed. Talk about that recruiting, and then I want to get into this matchup coming up November 23rd in the Swamp against Florida, because there's so much talk about Kiffin, and we know that. I don't think Kiffin's leaving and going anywhere. But let's talk about that recruiting right now, because there's a lot in play.
Yeah, Lane told the media on a Sunday call that he does via Zoom with the media that cover the program that expect a pretty vibrant 48 hours. Now, you can translate that to expect a commitment or 2 to come in. Yeah. There's still a commitment that we're waiting on to flip from LSU. So we'll see what happens over the next 24 hours there. But it was a big flip. Caleb Cunningham, the 5-star out of Choctaw County High School down in Ackerman, Mississippi, about 20 minutes from Starkville. So that was a big get for Ole Miss. He's the number 1 player in Mississippi on our service at 24/7 Sports. He is a 5-star product and a 5-star plus on some other services. He's just a phenomenal athlete. Returned a couple of punts for a touchdown the other night. So it was a situation to where he was signing autographs this past Saturday on the field, and he is absolutely coveted by Ole Miss.
Wow.
But yeah, recruiting is going very well. And I think if you look at the model for success in the SEC, I think you look at programs like Alabama, Georgia, LSU to a certain extent, Texas. It's a nice influx of high school talent versus what do you need to fill some gaps in the transfer portal. Now, obviously, Ole Miss has a program specifically on the defensive side of the ball that it is probably 95% transfer portal. And I think if you were to pin Lane Kiffin down, he would like to be somewhere around the 70-30 model of transfer versus high school, maybe even 60-40. But I do think Ole Miss, it would be advantageous for Ole Miss to continue to work heavily in the high school ranks, and they're doing so. So that's something I think would transition over. But you talked about the quarterback play of Deuce Knight. I don't know how much they're going to go after him. He's a four-star product out of Lucedale, plays at George County High School. They've got a big playoff game tonight. Coach James Ray and George County, the Rebels, are playing down in Jones County. So it'll be interesting to follow that game. But with A.J. Maddox, the true freshman out of Oak Grove, and we saw how good Austin Simmons is, who looks to be the heir apparent to Jackson Dart.
Yeah.
Don't know how much Ole Miss is going to be pushing for Deuce Knight. Obviously, they'd love to have him, but I know Auburn's going to be going all in with Deuce Knight. I'll be interested to follow his recruitment. You talked about the quarterback position.
Yeah.
Here's some numbers on Jackson Dart for Ole Miss. Currently in the country, he's number 1 in pass efficiency, number 2 in passing yards, number 6 in passing touchdowns, number 4 in passing yards per game, and number 3 in passing yards per catch. So he's been phenomenal, not only just against Georgia, but over the last 3 or 4 weeks. He was really good against LSU. That was a situation where Ole Miss just couldn't score in the red zone. That game should have been 27-0 in the first quarter. So Jackson Dart's been really good, but recruiting's really picked up over the last couple of weeks. Now that there's a new window of a December signing period, I expect Ole Miss to really take advantage of that December signing period.
All right, November 23rd, you're going to the Swamp down there. There's no easy games in the SEC, but Ole Miss is playing with their hair on fire. They are like, we can't lose another game. That's what's making them so dangerous, in my opinion. And that defensive front, the Great Wall, it is, Matt, you saw they're stifling teams at the line of scrimmage. And it makes their linebackers, maybe they're not the best group of linebackers, but it makes them better if those guys are tying up everybody at the line of scrimmage. What do you see going down when they head down there to play Florida? And your thoughts, let's kind of bounce around the whole conference. We've got a huge Florida audience that watches this show. We love them. GatorbaitMedia.com. We got 4 shows on this channel, and Urban Meyer, Best Fridays in Football, and then SECU and the Buddy Martin Show in this one. So let's talk about that. Then I want to get your thoughts, and Matt and I are going to go back and forth if you can, because you really know your stuff. And folks, again, tell them how they can follow you again, Brad, because you put out great content.
We hang out over on Twitter /X at Brad Logan COTE and at Reps247.com. That's an affiliate of 24/7 Sports. It's a game in the SEC, and anytime you go on the road in the SEC, it's going to be difficult. Kickoffs at 11. This is a situation where Ole Miss really wanted to move the Mississippi State game off of television, off of Thanksgiving, and ESPN wanted to leave it on Thanksgiving. So there was a happy medium where Ole Miss agreed to move it to Friday afternoon, and Ole Miss was allowed to pick a road game time, and they picked the Florida game to be at 11 o'clock. So this way they avoid any type of night game atmospheres. And at that point, when they picked the game, no one knew that Florida would be struggling as much as it has. Graham Burke was out. DJ Lagway, he's a game time decision this week. We'll see if he's available to go next week. Billy Napier as a coach has been kind of an influx in regards to, is he going to make it? Is he hot? Is he cold? And, we saw Scott Strickland, the athletic director of Florida, come out and laid out a press release that he would be back at least for another year. So they're hoping, I'm sure, to temper some recruiting hesitancy by some players, but it is not a great situation, and is a situation to where Ole Miss needs to go in and absolutely dominate early and put Florida out of the game. I do think if Ole Miss goes in, and I do expect them to play well, because of how well they played against Georgia. It all kind of started in the second half against Oklahoma. The last 8 quarters for Ole Miss has been pure domination by not only that defensive front, but by Jackson Dart in the offense. They've obviously struggled running the football, and there's a lot of dynamics that go into that in regards to offensive line play and run blocking schematics by John Garrison. And I think they're working on that. Ulysses Bentley's not had the season everyone expected him to have.
You're right.
Matt Jones, obviously Henry Parrish Jr. is out for the season. So I think they would like to at least begin some form of a running game. But, as well as the defense has played, it really doesn't matter at this point if they continue to play well. I expect Ole Miss to play well in Florida, and I expect Jackson Dart to have another record day through the air. It's been fun watching this wide receiving core without Trey Harris, arguably the best wide receiver in the country. And I think with Jordan Watkins and Caden Lee, Daquan Wright, the tight end from transfer from Virginia Tech, and Caden Prescorn, it's been a very fun offense. And not to mention Juice Wells had his biggest catch as a Rebel against Georgia on the touchdown pass. So it's been a fun offense to watch.
Yeah. Let me say something about one of our sponsors, Winter Timber Outdoors. See the QR code on the screen here in Athens, Alabama. Big day for Winter Timber Outdoors. They are breaking ground on their second store in Auburn, Alabama, out on Opelika Highway by the Village Colonial Mall, right by the Walmart. Listen, this is a great store. It is beautiful on the inside. Lots of space. Everybody in there, all their staff, Kenny Winter and Dylan Monroe, they run a great organization. The staff knows what they're talking about. Over 2,000 shotguns, rifles, and handguns in stock in the store. Huge selection of clothes. Sitka, that's their big deal. Sitka dealer. They've got deer stands. They've got all the food. If you like hunting ducks, deer, pheasant, quail, turkey, all the shooting sports, they've got you covered. Athens, Alabama, their goal is to grow in the footprint that is the Southeastern Conference. And right now they've got a Rete Masamara GPS BOGO, buy one, get one free. Click the QR code right there, folks. Athens is right next to Huntsville off Highway 72. Stop in there, let them know that you heard about them on SEC Sideline Sports. And I can just tell you, people I know that are affiliated with this Winter Timber Outdoors, they have some of the smartest and most innovative people in the outdoor hunting and dog training business. That is your store, Winter Timber Outdoors. Matt, jump in here, man. Brad, awesome stuff. I am so glad having you back on. And we got to do this again next Thursday at 8:50 if you can do it. I'm just throwing that in for you because I love this. But jump in here, Matt.
No, I think Brad obviously knows a ton about the Ole Miss product. And honestly, another thing that we haven't talked about is I think the bye week comes at a good time. Some people would say, well, they're playing really well. Why do you want to buy? But this time of year, football coaches, they like the extra week of prep. They like getting their kids a little rest, a little breather. And, I think Florida plays LSU this week. That's going to be a physical game. And then the Rebs are waiting, and I think they go in there, and I think they handle business quite easily. And I think, honestly, they end up 10-2, and I think they could jump all the way up into an 8-seed position, maybe higher, because people ahead of them are going to lose. And they have 2 very favorable games the rest of the year, and timing's everything. I think, as impressive of a win as it was last week, I also go back to the South Carolina road win because it was coming off that Kentucky loss. And South Carolina has been a dangerous football team all year, as we've seen in many games. And Ole Miss dominated them in South Carolina. So I think Ole Miss is a complete football team. On a personal note, my son, when he was on the A&M staff, recruited Walter Nolan. And I know he's been an addition to that defensive line. I think Jared Ives maybe has 8 sacks. Brad, I'm not sure the number, but that defensive front is tremendous. And I just think they're a dangerous team because they can – Ole Miss is one of the few teams that has the combination. I think if I was looking at the numbers correctly, I think Dart's 22 touchdowns to 4 picks, the ability to run the football as well. He's just an incredible player. He's going to be a great pro someday too. So Ole Miss got a chance to make a run. And I think, ironically, staying out of the SEC championship game another week where you don't have a chance to get beat up and get someone hurt helps heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, to your original point, I think it's really important that, we talked with Lane Kiffin, and he made the point that he's not normally very big on bye weeks. But,
Right.
With Jackson Dart injuring that ankle, he's in a boot this week.
Yeah.
But that's strictly precautionary, and he needs that ankle to heal, and he will go against Florida. Lane Kiffin made mention at the end of the game in the press availability that he didn't know if Jackson was going to be able to come back into the game. That's, of course, when Austin Simmons came in as cool as the other side of the pillow, led the team down for the touchdown on the 4th and 1 pass. Was just had absolute iron in his veins. I mean, it was really something to see. And so when you have that type of backup quarterback to come in and you don't shake a beat, I mean, you don't change the offensive game plan at all. In fact, you gravitate towards his skill set and what Austin Simmons can do with his feet. And I think that just lends Ole Miss fans to understand just how good Ole Miss is going to be going forward, specifically next year. Yeah. But you made mention about the bye week, and Lane said, this is actually coming at a good week. They're hoping to get Trey Harris back, who's had a growing injury. They're hoping to get Jaden Williams back, the starting left tackle. But other than that, Ole Miss is in really good shape in regards to injuries. So they're excited to get another week. And they needed a rest. I mean, this was a very, very physical game against Georgia. And anytime you play Georgia, you're going to get the best of the best. And they went toe-to-toe. And you talk about the defensive front. That Ole Miss defense, 24 sacks over 3 weeks.
Wow.
24.
Brad.
So that's just a phenomenal number.
It is. And in the preseason when we were picking, I had Georgia playing Ole Miss for the SEC championship. And again, they may not get there, but it may help them. So I want your thoughts on the teams that Ole Miss has played this year. Really, I want to know who are your top 4 that you think are the best in the SEC right now. And then, Matt, I'm going to throw that to you after Matt. Brad.
Yeah, I think honestly, Alabama's playing better than anybody in the conference right now. With what Kalen DeBoer is doing with Jalen Milroe and allowing him to run the offense is what he frankly should have been doing all year. He was having Jalen Milroe sitting back in the pocket and trying to throw the ball down the field to the talented wide receiver Williams. Yeah. When he should have rolled him out, start bootlegging, utilizing the tight end in the middle of the field, and just running the football. And that's what he did this past week. And I think Alabama's playing as well as anybody in the conference. I also think Ole Miss is playing really well. Georgia, I think, is at the top. And I'm not sold on Texas.
Right.
I need to see more out of Texas. They have no top 25 wins. We'll see how good Texas is when they play in College Station. We may not know how good Texas is until, I think right now, if you made me guess, I would say it'd be Texas and Alabama in the SEC championship game. I think both those programs are going to win out. But Texas A&M, I don't know if the Marcel Reed sweepstakes have been figured out, but it looked like they might have. I thought Carolina and Shane Beamer played really well. But here's the thing, Carolina, that talk about, I don't know if it means anything, but you talk about the best 3-loss team in the country, really.
Yeah.
So they very well could be. And I think, Matt, to your point, I think that was a really big win for Ole Miss. I mean, they had their backs against the wall, to say the least, and to be able to go into Columbia in a very hostile environment and turn the ball over. Get Carolina to turn the ball over, and they played really well and really dominated South Carolina. And that was kind of the resurgence of Ole Miss. And I know they lost the following week at LSU, but I thought Ole Miss played really well at LSU. I just think they just couldn't execute in the red zone. I made mention that a moment ago, and that's exactly where this offense has been. And they were able to absolutely execute against Arkansas, and they're continuing the momentum forward. But I think it's really Ole Miss, Georgia, Alabama, and then, I mean, sure, we could throw Texas in because they have one loss. And there's also Tennessee there with one loss. But I expect Tennessee to be beat heavily on Saturday by Georgia. I think they're going to get Georgia's best game, and I don't think that game's going to be very close.
Yeah, I think Georgia's going to come out as a 10-point favorite. Kirby is going to pull one of his all-time talks, but that won't be the only thing that causes it. I just think Georgia's still a special team, and Nico better be ready for the most confusing defense he's probably ever seen. And I like the 11 a.m. game. As a visiting team.
I'm not sure that Nico Amaliava is going to play. He's been in concussion protocol all week. Yeah. And so we may see the backup there for Tennessee. But even if he does play, I don't think it matters. I think Georgia beats Tennessee very, very handily on Saturday.
Yeah, remember what happened 2 years ago when Tennessee was number 1? They went down there and lost like in the rain 24-13 or something, but it wasn't even that close. So it's going to be a war. But the 11 a.m. game, I like that for the visiting team because you can take the crowd out before they're even sitting down because they don't get there till late first, early second quarter. That's that's a time slot, and the road team is already out of sync, so it doesn't affect them as much. Matt, your top 4 in the SEC. Before you say that, after you say that, I want to say something about Landers Ford, but give me your top 4.
I agree with Brad totally, and I think the game, I want to see what Texas does at College Station, assuming they beat Arkansas this week, which I think we all would probably agree they should. What happens if Texas loses at Texas A&M and A&M ends up with a one-loss SEC record? How far would Texas fall? That would be my question, because A&M would obviously then vault into the top 12 easily. So I definitely agree with how Alabama's playing right now. You got to have Ole Miss right there. I still feel very strongly about Georgia's going to do the same thing to Tennessee as Brad described it. I'm really curious how Texas finishes the year, because if they lose one of those games, that's going to shake things up a little bit in my mind.
Yeah. All right, let me say something about Landers Ford, the number 1 Ford dealership in the Mid-South. Proud to have them as a sponsor here on SEC Sidelines. Open Monday through Saturday. Service department, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Sales, 8 a.m., 7 p.m. Call out there and ask for Brad Bellamy, our good friend, the general manager. He'll direct you to a salesman that can walk you through the process. I drive an F-150. MJ just bought, a friend of mine, the new Bronco with the Sasquatch package. It is awesome. What a vehicle. And it drives, it just feels like you're floating on the road, even with the big tires. It's got the off-road package. But you go out there any day of the week except Sunday, and they are invested in the Mid-South. Guys, y'all see the Landers name everywhere on 6 different stadiums in the area. Title sponsor of the Touchdown Club of Memphis. Just a first-class dealership. Number 1 in the Mid-South for a lot of reasons, but dedication to customer service and making the experience a positive one is the best part about it. $500 off for SEC Sidelines audience members. Let them know you heard about it on Sidelines, located at Poplar and Houston Levee. LandersFordMemphis.com. Their motto, I love it. If you didn't buy your last car, truck, or SUV from Landers, you probably paid too much. Brad, before we let you go, and I really appreciate you staying on here long with us, and got to get you back on a lot more often. Looking at the SEC, and you look at brick and mortar, and I go down to Oxford. I've probably been down there 7 or 8 times the last 6 months. The brick and mortar, football facility, everything down there, they've got it. That Grove Collective. I've talked about it on this show a lot. What do you got, like 11,000 members in the Grove Collective or more? But there's a lot of money there. Are they going to go back and do that $350 million expansion on the stadium that they were talking about doing? Are they going to put a lot of that money into NIL? Because I know they were talking about doing something, but 68,000. They've done something to let that many people get in, and I don't know if the fire marshal is watching or not, but people told me that were at the game. I said, Rob, there were people on top of each other. I've got tons of Ole Miss friends that are season ticket holders. They said they've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, I think there were over 70,000. I just think they didn't announce it because they didn't want to.
Fire marshal was not listening.
Yeah, I do not anticipate Ole Miss to be very advantageous with the $350 million project, according to Director of Athletics Keith Carter.
Okay.
The words I was told is that they're looking to allocate that money elsewhere, which you can translate that to making sure that the fans understand that NIL is where the space needs to be right now, because Ole Miss wouldn't be where it's at right now without the Grove Collective, Walker Jones, and the NIL. I think Ole Miss has one of the most bustling NIL programs in the country, and that is because the fans have stepped up to the plate. I think you can look around the conference and see what programs are struggling in the NIL space. So I do not anticipate Ole Miss to move forward with that. They are finishing up a couple of facility projects. One is the softball project on campus. It's completely renovated softball stadium. It is really nice on the western side of the campus. They're also doing a couple of things at the Swayze Field and right field. But, yeah, the football field, Vaught Hemingway Stadium, nothing that I've been told for any major upgrades from a facility standpoint. Ole Miss is not going to focus on that right now. They're focusing 100% in the NIL space.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of money. I mean, there's rumors that Ohio State spent $20 million on last year's roster. They got Quinshon Judkins, and again, the Ulysses Bentley the fourth. That's still a mystery to me. I don't know why he's not playing more, but the SEC, Brad, close us out just with your thoughts, and then Matt, I'm going to come back to you, but I know Brad's got to get going. Is the league that strong? Is it parity? Is it mediocrity? How do you rank the league compared to the last 5 seasons?
Yeah, it's definitely not mediocrity. I think there's a lot of parity. I think the NIL space has changed the dynamic of college football. It's made a team like an Ole Miss that is not perennially in the college football playoff discussion, giving an opportunity to be there. And it is obviously because of the NIL space and the collective, but it's also because of a team that's really gelled together. And it's a head coach in Lane Kiffin that's one of the best head coaches in the country.
Yeah.
I do think the SEC is the preeminent conference in the country. You look at the Big Ten, and I think it's very top-heavy. You've got Ohio State, and you've got Penn State, and then it's everybody else. And I'm purposely not including Indiana. I probably should, but I don't think they've played anybody. And we'll see. Iowa's the same way. Teams like that don't play, the competition piece that the SEC plays. The ACC is just really, really down this year. And then we're talking about the Big 12. And quite frankly, guys, I don't really know who's in the Big 12 anymore. So,
yeah,
I think the SEC is exactly where it needs to be. I think there'll be 4 teams from the SEC make the college football playoff. And if you told me 5 teams made it, I wouldn't be surprised at the end of the day.
Yeah, I do. I just think in the interest, Brad and Matt, for TV viewers around the country is just off the charts. And you can't deny that 75, 80% of the TV sets in America live in the geographical footprint that makes up the Big Ten. And that's 4 of the top 5 in these recent rankings were in there. Brad, one more time, let them know how they can follow you, and look forward to having you on in the next week or 2 if you can make it.
Yep, appreciate that. We're at Twitter /X at Brad Logan COTE. That's kind of where we hang out in the LoganMediaNetwork.com. Also invite you to join us at Inside the Rebels. That's, of course, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports. That's at Rebs247.com.
Thank you so much, man. Have a great day. Matt, love having people on. You've never sounded better with the Yeti Blue mic and those headsets. Man,
yeah, Yeti as a corporate sponsor. I'm just wondering. You mentioned it 12 times
I wish
today.
I did.
Huh?
Let me say something about a couple of sponsors. Coolmore Logistics and Transportation, Memphis-based with a global reach. Anything that you need shipped across country or in between, steel coils, lumber, concrete, anything, they can ship it less than truckload, full containers, vans, located in Memphis. Click on that QR code. And also the great folks at it, Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Look, they're in Collierville, which is on the eastern edge of Shelby County, next to Memphis, obviously. Easy to get out there. Over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots, kids' boots, great-looking women's clothing. Filson, Barber, STS, Pendleton, Schaefer. They've got more duck heads than you'll see anywhere. I've never seen duck heads, but also got duck head blazers, pullovers, button-downs, polos. Of course, the duck head pants, and acres down south. They make all these SEC, ACC, Big 12 polos. Great people to work with at Hewlett and Dunn. Click the QR code. Let them know you heard about it on SEC Sidelines. And you saw the HouseIndustriesInc.com. They make all the big agricultural products. So we're proud to have all these great sponsors like them. Tom Martin Body Shop, Matei's Garage in Memphis. Find them all on our website at www.sidelines.live. Matt, let's wrap up here in the last few minutes. Extraordinary job with all those graphics and everything with executive producer Brendan Martin. Matt, as a coach, and I've volunteer coached people, you got to be coachable. Brendan is so good. He gets you and me out of our comfort zone. How to get the tech right, how to get the mic, how to get all this stuff right. But he's putting up these graphics, and here it is right here. Lisa, she is advancing in this breast cancer research drive here. Click on that QR code and vote for Lisa. This show is here to serve our audience and to help our audience's causes. And this is one that is very, very important. Matt, when you look at the weekend lineup of SEC games, Alabama's got Mercer. Arkansas goes to Texas. I was in Little Rock yesterday at Bossa Nova, a restaurant owned by Danny Monroe. Great gathering, about 20 of us there. Sigma News, Jim McClellan puts the group together. Kenny Gibbs, Michael McClellan, a lot of great people. They're all Razorbacks, Sigma News. Playing Texas is big, but like they say, beating Texas is bigger. That is a huge game. It's a conference game for the first time since 1991. And you look at Florida's got LSU in the swamp. Man, I don't know what LSU is going to do. Are they checking out because they're out of the playoffs? Tennessee goes to Georgia. Kentucky's got Murray State. Missouri is at South Carolina. And that's a game, quite frankly, and Texas A&M has New Mexico State. But, Matt, real quick, nobody's talking about Missouri at South Carolina. They call the Battle of Como. Real quick, who do you think wins that one? Because Missouri thinks they're going to still make the playoff. They're 0-2 against top 25 teams this year, and they weren't even close in either one of those games.
Well, I think South Carolina wins handily. I also think that Georgia rebounds because it's a really Georgia starts their playoff run this week against Tennessee. So Georgia is in an elimination game. Honestly, I think Georgia wins. And then it would not shock me. LSU really surprising performance last week at home against Alabama. Is this the week where Florida pulls off a big upset? I don't know what how big of an upset it would be, but can Florida keep this game tight in the fourth quarter and find a way to win the game? It's going to be really, really fun weekend. But I think the Georgia-Tennessee game really starts the playoffs for Georgia. It's a huge game for Georgia, and I expect you mentioned it earlier, Rob, but Kirby Smart is going to have them breathing fire. They're going to be ready to roll. And honestly, you look at Carson Beck, he's not had the year that everyone thought he would.
Yes.
If he can find a way to limit the interceptions and limit the turnovers, if they stay turnover free, Georgia's hard to beat. And I'm talking about anyone in the country.
I agree.
So if Georgia rights the ship, wins this week, wins out, and gets in the college football playoff, no one wants to play him, Rob.
I don't think they do either. And that win over Texas was big. And they also, remember, had to play at Alabama, got down 28-0 in the first quarter, came fighting back.
Came back.
But
that's right.
LSU, Florida, I don't know what LSU team's going to show up.
Yeah.
They've got problems
really unfortunate.
on that team. Yeah,
they do.
And I think
it's unfortunate.
Yeah. And I think Brian Kelly is one of the most frustrated coaches, just a lot of bonehead penalties and mistakes. It started in the game against Southern Cal out at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. Guy making stupid gestures after a touchdown. Man, I'd have that guy doing push-ups for an hour straight. You got to stop that stuff. And Florida, what I would watch out for with Florida is if Billy Napier, at some point, they've got to make a decision. But you have to decide now. Looks like they've decided they're going to keep him, okay? Right. Because you got December signing date. It's right on top of us. And if you fire him now, you're going to lose the December signing period. Who are you going to get as a coach? This December signing period has really screwed up the coaching part of it, Matt. And I think we all say, well, we need to get it over with, but they still have a February signing date too. Why do we have two? If you want to make it simple, because the guy could also have a bad senior year. We got some things.
Last thing I'll say, Rob, you have the national championship game. I think it's January 20th this year. Let's move everything back to February. Let's get rid of the early signing period. Therefore, we don't have to put coaches kind of out there while they're still trying to finish their seasons. And therefore, too, if I'm having a really good season and someone's trying to pry me away, it doesn't happen as frequently. I'm just telling you, it makes no sense. What you said is 100% correct.
Yeah, and so at some point, common sense has got to work its way back into the conversation. For executive producer Brendan Martin, extraordinaire. It's like having Beethoven as your music director. Matt Dean, John Hartwell, Brad Logan, and all of our viewers. We're the most blessed country in the history of the world. We most often see the face of Christ in the least among us. Find ways to go out and help people, make a positive difference in people's lives every day, and you will get richer for it. We'll see you in the morning, everybody. Appreciate you watching, and share the link. See you tomorrow.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shopp's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.